Today, we're talking about why Rashida Tlaib, this lady here, is the best politician in America. At least the best elected one. And just for some context, in case people didn't know, Rashida Tlaib has the best voting record in Congress. She is consistently the most on the right side of the issues. I think Ilhan Omar is relatively close, but if you really try to scrutinize everything over years and years of voting, like Rashida Tlaib is incredibly consistent about being on the right side of issues, like no other politician we've seen in recent times, recent decades at least. So keep that in mind, and we'll see how a politician like that communicates and what she has to say. Damn, listen to that crowd.
Where movements are birthed. It's where each neighborhood has its history rooted in a movement that grew from the streets, not City Hall. Movements that grew from the ground up, not legislative branches full of sellouts in corporate boardrooms. Like Lila Capital, who worked with Rosa Parks, Grace Lee Boggs. They taught me as a young organizer, and they taught me, they understood that transformative change in our country always comes from us, not the White House and not the United States Congress.
Remember, she's a congressperson. I love it.
We all know how terrifying this current political climate is. We have watched in horror for years as both Democrats and Republicans have ignored working class to carry.
She's also a Democrat. I love it.
Out wars to help the 1% and the billionaires, and now, a genocide of the Palestinian people. This is a room that understands, and we know this. They would rather send bombs and money to a rogue, violent apartheid state than fund free health care here at home. Both party establishments should forever be condemned by their immoral participation in one of the history's worst crimes at every expense of the American people. You know what my colleagues don't understand, and they don't want to acknowledge that all across the country, every corner of our nation, people who do not share my faith nor my ethnicity are demanding the end to the funding of the genocide, to the war crimes. On whether or not they want to stop the funding of the genocide. They are too too many warmongers in Congress. Many of them profit from the defense contractors by owning stocks in more manufacturing companies. So when I watch them press the button, the yes button, for the bloated nearly $1 trillion defense budget, they benefit personally. But when I see them do that, I know it's years farther away from Flint getting clean drinking water and all across the country, that it takes us farther away from actually fixing and having universal health care, because right now we have sick care. It takes us further away from understanding the working people should be at the forefront of what our government funds for them to be able to thrive, not just survive. U.S. weapons was killed because members, including Presidents Biden and Trump, believe Palestinians don't deserve to live. They think and believe in those racist tropes that have made Palestinians disposable in their eyes. Shame. But DSA, we have always been rooted in a growing anti-war movement in our country, one that is centered dismantling capitalistic systems that benefit from death, extraction, oppression, and pain. From Detroit to Gaza, DSA knows that when we say free Palestine, we are also saying water is a human right, healthcare for all, stop wars, and massive because they got sick. The violence against our people doesn't have to come in a form of a gun or a bomb. The system and structures around us kill our people, our neighbors. It's the same effect. That's something that DSA continues to show them over and over again. Our government is scared of the strength of our movement, and they're increasingly desperate. Repression shows how weak they really are in the face of our people. We must continue to demand complete arms embargo of all weapons to the Israeli government. You all know this. And I say this honestly with love. I don't care what you call it or label it. A weapon is a weapon. Yet, you vote for more funding to the same country that is committing the genocide. You cannot sign letters expressing concerns over the forced starvation while enabling the same Israeli government to commit the war crimes using access to food as a weapon of war. You can't boycott Netanyahu's speech. Yet you meet with him later and even spread the racist rhetoric and lies of the government that continues to be rooted in anti-Palestinian racism and Islamophobia. If I'm not...
Sorry, I know I'm not saying much, but I kind of have no notes. This is kind of perfect. I love that most of her points that she's bringing up here are directed towards Democrats. Even like, you know, what are seen as very progressive Democrats who to some extent are even speaking out on this issue. Like she's taking shots at them. It's the right tactical and moral thing for her to be, you know, calling out the people in her political proximity, the members of her party who are being hypocritical and obviously aren't doing enough to stop what Israel's doing. And it also just shows very clearly, like, why she's the best. How, like, why she's different than and better to even the, more progressive politicians in her party, in virtually every case.
Clear, let me make it more clear for Congress. Weapons are weapons. Genocide is genocide, no matter how much people avoid the word. I mean, listen carefully. The elected leaders of Israel are using the language of genocide and ethnic cleansing. Listen to them. It's past time that my colleagues stop making excuses, trying to strategize, and think that somehow there's a strategy around genocide. I just simply asked them, when they asked me what they should do, I said, poll your district like you poll them on every issue. The majority of them will say, stop the funding of the genocide. War criminal Netanyahu has announced plans to forcibly expel the entire population and permanently take over Gaza. This is the final stage of the genocide. Colleagues will tweet about it, express concern, but won't use the power of their vote to stop sending the money and the funds. But there will be a reckoning. There will be a reckoning for these monstrous crimes. And the excuses of war criminals and those genocidal funders and cheerleaders will not save them from the justice that they will see in their communities. Because if you've ever heard my speeches, I sometimes say this. I wonder if they imagined that they weren't Palestinian, would they finally...
Love you.
I wonder if they didn't imagine that they were Palestinian. Just close your eyes, I tell them on the floor. Imagine they were Palestinian. Would you finally see them worthy of life? The dehumanization started way before I came to Congress. Way before. They continue to spread unbelievably untruths about the Palestinian people, somehow making them less mothers, less children, less human. Some know the truth, but they are cowards who stand up, again, will not stand up for their districts. You know, I read a quote from a journalist, Ahmad, and you all have probably seen this, but it's an important quote because I know exactly what he means because I feel like it is going to happen. He said, quote, one day when it's safe, when there's no personal downside to calling it a thing, downside to calling a thing what it is, when it's too late to hold anyone accountable, everyone will have always been against it.
That's right.
But we all know, DSA, that Palestine and countless places around the world, before and after, have been testing ground for the disgusting alliance of American politicians and capitalists to innovate new ways to starve us, to torture, and kill people who demand their rights. And those tests are now echoing back across our country every single day. Masked ICE thugs are terrorizing our beloved neighbors. Trump and his ghouls are systematically dismantling our government to make us sicker and poorer while billionaires get richer. And the racists and bigots feel more empowered than ever to spew their cowardly hatred and violently lash out.
Shame.
At the same time, we're seeing unprecedented resistance organically, taking to the streets to protect our communities. Residents come up to me and say, this is the first time I've ever done a protest. I'm so inspired by the countless videos I see of ordinary people putting themselves on the line to protect each other. Ice Watch, mutual aid organizations are springing up all across the country. Workers, our beautiful workers, are unionizing and winning. Hell yeah. I know, because I've been in Detroit all my life, and Detroit has been on the front line of workers withholding their labor and forming unions so they could actually live. And today, they strive victoriously for higher wages and no tears in the United States or in Mexico. There is a revolution energy in the air. It's the first time I've ever felt an alliance of people that are anti-war, but they're also anti-billionaire class pushing back and saying, tax the fucking rich. This power, people power, into a force that can fight fascism and win. A united front is needed in order to beat back savagery. I need you to do that. When you caucus, when you come together, understand this is our duty, this is our responsibility, this is our moment. You don't need to tell me that the Democratic Party establishment has completely failed to present meaningful resistance to this billionaire class, to Trump and fascism. Their donors are the same in the end of the day. They serve the same interests, capital and empire. This is the first time, again, they've seen the lowest favorability since 1994. We already know why, but they're actually clueless as to why. But that's why DSA is so important. We're able to honestly, authentically diagnose the problems facing working class Americans and fight for real change that addresses those problems at the root. The working masses, y'all, they're hungry for revolutionary change. And DSA can grow as a political force when it focuses on organizing the people that the corporate Democrats and Republicans have abandoned for dead. That's right. Meanwhile, I've already seen this. As so-called institutes of higher education, students are harassed and punished by scared neoliberals using Trump-like tactics for protesting mass cleansing of a whole people. In my own backyard, the University of Michigan, Ann Arbor. Intimidating, bullying dissent on campus. But these students have got the president of the university, the regent members, and even the attorney general for Michigan so scared that the University of Michigan is willing to sacrifice its long, prestigious, and honorable name to cover their eyes to genocide. You know, people attack me all the time, you're a democratic socialist, and I smile at them. And I said, you know, I'm a daughter of the UAW.
So just a couple notes, kind of about, I guess, the points she's focusing on here. I think something you can see about, like, an effective socialist is that, you know, they'll talk about these global issues, they'll talk about kind of these international struggles, but they also have a very clear understanding and can kind of advocate for that understanding of this is how what's happening on the ground at a local level, right? She's from Michigan, huge UAW, Auto Workers Union place. Also, Ann Arbor, Michigan is basically built around the University of Michigan. So she's directly showing how these local initiatives and local issues relate directly, are just part of these larger issues. And I think when we want to be effective, meaningful change agents and activists on the left, this is the kind of example. Like, she wouldn't be in as good of a position and able to comment so succinctly and powerfully about, you know, these issues on a global scale if she wasn't engaged with and didn't appreciate these same issues and how they manifest on a local level. And another example of that was, going back a few minutes, I really liked how she was talking about how the ruling class knows that when we say free Palestine, we're also saying water is a human right. We're also saying healthcare is a human right. We're also saying housing is a human right. We're also saying education is a human right. And, you know, the flip side of that is the methods of oppression and denial of human rights that they're, you know, the capitalists, billionaires, global empires, whatever, that they're developing and kind of experimenting with in Gaza and in Palestine broadly, those same methods, whether it's surveillance or violence or state manufactured, you know, deprivation of human rights, those same things will be turned back on people, whether it's in America or all over the world. And yeah, and having human rights in one place makes human rights elsewhere much more realizable. And it's a reason why you'll hear so many on the left, you know, whether they're associated with the DSA or not, repeat the saying, think global, act local. So I think she's just a very good example of this. Like, it's almost hard to believe that a politician this good exists, you know? It's almost like Bernie in 2016 vibes of just like, how is this a thing? Like, how is somebody actually good and actually consistently truthful a figure who's prominent and in a position of power and leadership? Like, and it should be the norm, but, you know, we're in such a bad place politically that it just seems so unusual to us. But you have to find hope in it, and you have to see the path forward in, you know, the example she's setting and in, you know, the ideas she's promoting here.
Once asked me, you know, you're the eldest of 14, one of 14, how do you got straight teeth? And I smiled and said the UAW. You know, when my dad fought with his union for dental care, you know, people don't realize that moment of how incredibly beautiful that moment to get all his kids, line them up at the local dentist office, which ended up expanding, and my dad says that was us. But people don't understand. When I get asked that in the media, I said, I don't care, attack me, because I won't allow my neighbor to go hungry. Go ahead and call me the names you want, but I will not allow my neighbor to go without water. You see, we have to show people, not talk about it in resolutions or bylaws, and I say this lovingly, big sis. I know, I'm saying it lovingly. Please. Trust is built by human connection and lived experiences as much as it is by knocking doors in communities. For DSA to live up to our potential, we have to be willing to grow ourselves. We need more members from more diverse communities in leadership roles, y'all. We are failing. And again, I'm telling you as a big sis, we are failing when a room like this only has a handful of our Black neighbors. We need to be intentional. A lot of working class folks have strong historical ties to the Democratic Party. looking for a new home. They want to envision the alternatives, and we have it. We have to get better at talking to people in an approachable way about the democratic socialism can mean into their lives. For a war on poverty, this is their home, right here at DSA. We have to make the change we want to see. Again, aligned with people, everyday people that are losing hope. Part of how we're already doing that is the very grassroots level. Just this week, DSA member Denzel McCampbell won his Detroit City Council primary election. He didn't take a dime from corporations, he didn't sell out. He knows at the root of the issues and challenges in the community he's going to represent, inshallah, the monopoly, this big utility company in our community. He watches them buy politicians, buying off silence in Lansing. His lived experiences is what drives him. And I believe, again, it shares our values. It's those lived experiences we highlighted and shown that he, as a member of DSA, is fighting against the monopoly, against the raised rates, against, again, the dehumanization. It feels like when they cut your electricity because you're too poor to, again, pay for the high increased rates. This is what I'm talking about when we say get connected people. I know that every person in here could win in a local election to help someone that they know get into office. A few hundred votes can change the trajectory of our communities. I won. I don't know if y'all know this. I know Detroit DSA knows this. But I won by only 900 votes in 2018. I didn't shy away from being a proud DSA member. I didn't shy away in saying I'm not going to bow down to corporations. I was unapologetic. And we knocked 55,000 doors, and it was difficult. There was establishment Democrats in there. But we did it with love. We did it because we were going to connect people to the human race. We were going to share our lived experiences, teaching people, again, for me, being a daughter of Palestinian immigrants, my dad only 4th grade education, my mother only 8th grade education, and I want to be able to represent the community to help raise me with my parents. Those are the human connections and the stories and the lived experiences that need to be part of our movement. And again, we have to speak the language of people. And again, get away from just these messages and everything. The Democratic Party already does it, and they do a terrible job. And so I just want us, again, laugh all you want, but every field organizer that works on my team leaves as a social worker. And they love it. We're helping people get through everyday challenges. But you don't have to be a DSA member to have been inspired by the primary win of Zahran Mamdani. It makes my heart so full. And if that's not for you, every person, again, here can talk to their friends, their family, neighbors about politics. I always say work your backyard, and I'm not talking about your physical backyard, the people around you, your network, again, that crew of people that trust you. Because we know that we can talk about class, about race, about gender, sexuality, and yes, tearing down the very system that will fund bombs abroad while we still don't have clean drinking water and Flint are all across the country. But we can do that, DSA, much better than any political party establishment. The rich and the powerful want us defeated, disencouraged, and tired. And I sometimes feel that way. But we must have faith in the power of the people to overpower billionaires and fascists who think they run our country. They don't get it. The power is in the neighborhoods, not Washington, D.C. So we are standing at a crossroad in American history. We are going to take this country back for our working families and defeat these pathetic, cowardly, hateful fascists. We're going to win because we don't have option. And yes, we are going to free Palestine. They don't have any other choice. Our movement isn't going anywhere, and we're just getting started. Thank you all so much.
Pretty cool. Nice. I really gotta say, I appreciate the fact that,
And the dehumanization.
you know, she didn't waste her time whining about Trump or the Republicans in general. Like, she was basically laser focused on the billionaires, the capitalist class, and the Democrats who, you know, enable what they do and largely support what they do. And I think it's really important, like, you look at the difference between, like, the messaging of corporate Democrat, you know, conservative Democrat who's just screeching about Trump 24 hours a day versus something like she's talking about the UAW in Detroit, which is valid if you think about how many people like her had much, like, were able to reach the potential they had because they had parents who are UAW workers. And then also she alluded to, like, especially like if you go back in history, in terms of like workers' rights, things like having weekends, like so much of this is the result of big strikes. And those strikes are only possible to coordinate when the workforce has like a large amount of union participation in it. So again, being able to just relate these local issues to national issues in such like a fluid, seamless way, understanding how they're connected. And yeah, just having all the smoke for the Democrats. Like, this is a Democrat. And she's like, Democrats are useless. Congress is fucking useless. You love to see it. You love to see honesty. You know, you love to see somebody who understands that the real political correctness is speaking truth to power, right? It depends where you're trying to derive your political power from. If you're trying to derive your political power from donors and the support of the ruling class, then political correctness sounds more like Hillary Clinton or Trump in their own ways. They say what's politically correct, what's, you know, convenient for them. But if you're really trying to represent the people, then this would be the correct thing. And it's also the moral thing. Oh, also, this, I don't know why they only have 9.5 subscribers. Give them a subscribe. I'm giving them a subscribe. I'm giving them a like. That was very moving. Despite the leftist audio, it was very moving. And I enjoyed it. Alright, we've got another one. It's a long one, but I have a feeling it's going to be fun. And I'll listen through it all and comment, but I'll make sure to edit out, you know, the highlights of it so that people don't necessarily have to watch the whole hour and 48 minutes of it, though I do recommend that.
You're here at the DSA National Convention here in Chicago. You just delivered a keynote speech, and how are you feeling? Do you feel emboldened? Do you feel powerful? Do you feel like we have a movement?
It's like being with family and just being with people that understand. You know, when my tears come down, it's because it's just been very painful. Just watching not only what Trump is doing, but just even before that, the political systems have been set up in a way that continues to silence us or continue to, I don't know, just make us feel less than in our own country. So it's just been overwhelming. I mean, just watching everything online now, the ICE, thugs, and just hearing all the stories. And I can tell you just images after images. You don't have to be an immigrant. You don't have to be Palestinian. You don't have to be a Democrat or part of a political party. People do not want to continue to watch people fund this kind of extraction. And
This kind of violence.
Yeah, it's violence. And but here, I mean, I just feel like I'm with family. I mean, especially Metro Detroit DSA, I mean, they had my back when I first ran, and I don't know if the underdog is the right word, but a lot of people didn't know who I was. And they believed in my message of, we're not going to allow corporations to infiltrate our campaign. We're going to run on anti-poverty, right to clean air, clean water. And we won, I mean, by very little, but we created a movement, and now I'm there, fighting back against those that might have been there for decades and just don't get how hard it's been for so many of our families at home.
Shout out. So I just want to shout out to Bernie for like laying the groundwork and like priming the national consciousness, especially among the Democratic base, enough to like recognize real when it occurs, when it emerges. You know what I mean? I think Tlaib, she came into Congress at the same time as AOC did, basically. And I think Ilhan Omar was about a year later. And I guess, like, shout out to all of them for laying the groundwork for somebody like Zoran, where at this point, people who pay attention to these things and care about, promoting progressive politics, they can sense, they know the vibes, they know the kind of things like not taking any corporate money, etc. Never mind just running on free healthcare and stuff. It creates, it's part of a movement. It's like cultural signifiers. And, I think what Bernie did got the ball rolling, and what Rashida did and is doing is just making it easier for future, people like her to emerge and start having the reins of power.
Let's just dive right into the main points of contention here that I feel like you probably get asked a lot. The election took place. Kamala Harris and the Democratic Party lost. Yeah. And not only did they lose the actual election, not only did they lose the Electoral College, they lost the general population vote as well. What do you think happened?
I mean, one, I think it's very important for folks to know it's 7 swing states lost. But it's the first time since 1994 the Democratic Party favorability has dropped. I want folks to know when he was elected the first time in 2017, Democratic Party favorability just jumped, skyrocketed. That did not happen now in 2025, even though there's overwhelming opposition to the betrayal bill that literally kicks people off of health care and gives to the rich.
Yeah.
What I feel very much is there has been an abandonment to some of our core values. I grew up with a UAW dad. He was a Democrat. Didn't matter if there was a D next to their name, they voted Democrat because in many ways it was like hurt reduction. That person will hurt me less.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go with that party. But now the lack of trust, but the lack of really feeling like the party has their back. They didn't want a Palestinian Muslim that said the G word campaigning with Vice President Harris. They wanted a campaign with Liz Cheney.
Yeah.
And I don't, understand why they don't understand how terrible that was. And it's not just the vice president. We're not talking about, it's not her. It's the establishment, because the same people get latched on, got their claws into the next nominee, the next person that's going to run for president. You'll see it. It's the same names over and over again. And it's incredibly unfortunate. I said it in my speech, Hasan, like the same donors are funding both parties. And for me, the general population or worker, if you're watching this, you're thinking, well, do they even have my back? Which side are they on? And so I think it's a really important a moment in the Democratic Party establishment, and I hope they wake up, because doing the same thing over and over again is insane. We lost to a felon. We lost to Trump.
I know, twice.
Yes.
Yeah, after he already had, you can curse on here as well.
Yeah,
after he did everything up the first time,
Yeah.
and then did January 6th.
Yeah.
The Democratic Party's performance was so
he
disastrous.
said everything he's going to do, and he's doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Project 2025.
Yeah.
It's being implemented. Project Esther also being implemented, specifically on the boundaries of attacking free speech.
Yeah, absolutely.
We saw this unfold with Mahmoud Khalil and many others who were arrested, apprehended for thought crimes, things that Republicans have routinely criticized. And as a matter of fact, it's actually what I wanted to talk about. You've been in these circles at this point. You've been a politician for a while. And my question to you is, this is definitely a question that I have and a question that people in my community have, like, is it cynicism? Is it like the ineptitude? Is that deliberate? Is that by design? Because I go back and forth.
I don't think it's that simple. I think it really is denial. So
they're bubbled in.
They're bubbled in. When I tell people that over 50% of my colleagues are millionaires, they're like, what? I said, both Democrat, Republican. Like, if you talk to them, even a Democratic colleague, I remember this when the federal government shut down. Seriously, Piker, you know what? One of my Democratic colleagues goes to me, why are they in the food bank line? Why can't they just go get a loan? And I was like, what? And again, the longer, I've been there 7 years, the longer I'm there, I can see the disconnect. It's a class, right? They're in an income bracket that will never understand what it means to not afford that deductible when you go to the doctor, or, to live, there literally pollution all around you, and your kid has asthma and you can't afford the asthma. All of that to say is there is this real disconnect. And, when people say they're party elites and stuff, they're talking about very rich people that are in places of position making policies. And you saw it with the cryptocurrency. Let's talk about, the bill came through, and a lot of Democrats supported the Republicans' proposal. And you saw it. People that are part of the Progressive Caucus supported that proposal. It was the #1 funder of this past presidential campaign. They funded Trump overwhelmingly.
And he's doing
just
open grift.
legitimized them.
Yeah. He's openly grifting as well. Like, I have some friends who track a lot of the cryptocurrency stuff, and they can't believe how rampant the corruption is and how in your face it is, like with the Donald Trump coin that came out, and then the subsequent DOJ and numerous other regulatory agency investigations that were dropped for people who specifically bought in the Donald Trump coin and was able to get a meeting with Donald Trump. And
Pay
that's
to play.
it is. I'm Turkish. I grew up in Turkey. It's something that I've already seen. Even
I was
down
at the Pan American Congress, and I was just telling folks, I was there with folks from Venezuela, El Salvador, Ecuador, Brazil. They're all like, this happened to, you guys don't understand. This is real, and you guys need to understand what's coming. Fascism comes here. It's very clear that the unlawfulness of this administration is going to lead to breaking down even more rights.
For sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I don't know what if you talk to them, they're mothers. I try to okay, they're human beings, but it's that lived experience that they lack, or this disconnect. And who's in their ear? They're donors who are people that extract from the community. These are the same people that continue to want the status quo continue. They don't want to fix shit.
So you're saying it's that they're mostly bubbled in, they're mostly in this echo chamber, and I think the process of being in Congress kind of pushes you away from the average person, which is ironic because as a public servant, you're probably supposed to be more in tune with the values of your constituents.
They need to go home to their districts. They need to go in their community.
But even that experience, because we've seen town halls with Mike Flood and his constituents in Nebraska are basically we want to eat the rich.
Yeah.
And
they want to tax the rich.
Yeah,
it's very popular.
They're screaming tax the rich. They're
Medicare
screaming Medicare for all.
Very popular. Paid leave, very popular.
Exactly. These are incredibly popular pieces of legislation, and they've been popular for a very long time, in spite of the insurmountable media attention on the opposite side, the constant propaganda saying this is actually bad for you, because the media is also backed by these very same corporate interests that also fund both parties.
I've even heard one of the I don't know, back in the day, political consultant for the Democratic Party. I think he was for Clinton or something. I can't remember his name. And he basically said, oh, everybody just don't do anything, Democrats. Just be still. Let them miss us. That was his approach to fighting fascism. Is, oh, get it. But even when we had the trifecta, we couldn't get Voting Rights Act done. We couldn't get some of the major elements that I think would have touched people's lives immediately. We couldn't get it done. I mean, I watched them botch the minimum wage increase. I've watched them continue to botch environmental protections. Again, throwing crumbs at us and saying, at least it's something. But our lives, it's not like we can get years back, right? I mean, you get sick, you get cancer. It's not like you can stop getting cancer. You need access to quality health care and not go bankrupt in our country if you get sick. And so I wish there was a way to explain anything, but everything that people might think right now out there of the bubble, the swamp, whatever the hell they call it, it is a part of its corruption, a part of its who gets Congress, but it's also a part of the fact that many of them, again, are in an income class that will never, ever, no matter they have the gavel or not, understand the urgency of moving on these agendas that, to me, are nonpartisan. These are...
Their kids aren't the ones getting poisoned when the new like AI data center is like opening up next door, and then the water supply is destroyed.
That's right.
So they don't have these. They don't have these same immediate concerns.
Water, you know, they're just they're never going to understand. They think press releases, letters. You saw me say it, tweets, all this. Like that's enough to make it. People don't fall for that shit anymore. They know it's like, well, how'd you vote? You know, I think I was the only one to vote no, absolutely no. My son was with me on the floor, my 14-year-old, and he's like, Mom, you're the only no. I said, it's 14 acres of Forest Service land given to a concrete company in Wisconsin. I'm not going to support, especially if the Forest Service Department is like, no, you know, they don't want to give the land. 14 acres to a for-profit concrete company in, you know, Wisconsin. But it's this whole idea, not in my backyard, right? No, not in my backyard. As long as it's not in their backyard, I don't give a shit. And I, you know, functioning that way loses, again, more trust within the Democratic Party establishment. But I saw people in very, very Republicanish district stand for Green New Deal, like Katie Porter, and still win. She stood for Medicare for All and still won. And her district was very, very, you know, leaning, I would say leaning Republican, had a lot of Republican base. But people knew where she stood. She was anti-corporate greed. She was for fixing our health care. She was pushing back against price gouging. With these folks, Hasan, I can tell you, as soon as they walk in the room, I go, here it is. They don't give a shit about the Democratic base. They are talking.
I just wanted to comment on what she just said about Katie Porter, and it's clearly something she alluded to with herself, like, oh, Republicans come to my town halls, they thank me because I want to audit the Pentagon, all this kind of stuff. It's funny that the furthest left politicians in the Democratic Party are the ones who actually know how to speak to Republicans. Like, and again, shout outs to Bernie. In 2016, he had like there was a large demographic of like Republican voters or, you know, conservative leaning independents as well, who were totally on board with Bernie, but didn't fuck with Hillary at all. And it's funny in the sense of like the open strategy from the Hillary camp at the time was, well, by running a more conservative campaign and candidate against Trump, for every like progressive we lose, we'll pick up like 2 conservatives in the suburbs or something, right? And I'm not going to like, I don't care to speak to like suburban voters in particular. It's not really relevant. But the general trend is that, in fact, not only do you not lose progressives by running somebody who's like a bold leftist, basically, but you actually start picking up a lot of those independents and even like Republicans who can see that, like, even if they don't think they agree on 100% of issues with the leftist candidate, they can see that the leftist candidate is authentic and is like clear about what they believe in and is like genuinely fighting for that. The same way that I think most leftists would prefer somebody like Ron Paul over like the average Republican. Because like is terrible as Ron Paul is, like seriously terrible on a lot of issues, he doesn't take corporate money, and he is like a firm believer in like certain civil rights and everything, and you can count on him to fight for those things, and you're not going to like donors and lobbyists aren't going to like push him off. You know, the old saying is there were two offices in the Senate that lobbyists would skip: Bernie Sanders and Ron Paul. You at least know you have somebody you can work with on, you know, those certain issues they believe in. And we see it similarly in New York, where something like 85%, or it might have been higher, of young men who voted in the Democratic primary voted for Zoran. You know, that as much kerfuffle as the media, as much noise as the media likes to make about like, young men are conservative, like, first of all, it's like, I've said this on stream before, but it's been a thing since Roman times that when a tyrant, a demagogue, somebody who's just like tricking the masses to support them to political ends, like to gain political power, it's always been the case that young men are the easiest demographic to fool, and that like those tyrants and demagogues, or wannabe tyrants, they rise to power by, you know, they're always going to have the powerful wealthy interests on their side. But besides that, the easiest group to convince, the easiest group to trick throughout history has always been young men. That's not like a new thing. And then, you know, as they get older and a little bit more worldly, generally they become like less susceptible to being tricked that way. And we're seeing that play out with Trump, right now, a lot of young people and a huge amount of young men are like realizing that Trump isn't the shit. He kind of sucks. And it's kind of pathetic that they're only realizing this at this late date, but you know, if they didn't pay any attention to politics until, you know, within a couple years, then you could see how within the last few years, if somebody never paid attention to politics before, maybe they could be tricked into thinking that like the Republicans cared or were going to make things better or something like that. But now they can see it's not the case, right? And this isn't like a new trend. It's not like, oh, suddenly this new generation of young men is like super right wing. It's like, no, they've demographically inherently always just been like the most vulnerable to being fooled. That's just a thing. And you could say like, why is it young men? Why is it not young women as well? Well, it could be young women to an extent, but I think part of the culture of patriarchy is just that men are a little bit more atomized and a little bit more like individualistic in the sense of being like disconnected, not having as many friends, not having like as rigorous social circles or support systems, and that also makes you more vulnerable. And of course, especially in the what's different is that in the modern age, while the internet gives us access to more information and everything like that, tech companies, oligarchs, billionaires have basically have rigged the internet and the economy in general to be as like atomizing as possible, to isolate us, to be as isolating as possible, right? And the more isolated those young men become, the more vulnerable they become to propaganda. I don't think this is like a new concept to most of us. But anyway, this is all to say that you don't win. Like, if a young person think about it this way too then. If a young person is tricked into voting for Trump, you don't win that young person back over to the Democrats by being like Joe Manchin or Chuck Schumer, like being, or Alyssa Slotkin. You don't win them over by having a Democrat who's just like a Republican half or more of the time, right? Because why would they jump if they're being tricked by Trump and his fascism? Why would they prefer like the diet version of that, the just more moderated version of that to the actual thing. You have to give them a real alternative, which is why the way to like break people out of that Trump spell is to like show them a leftist who's principled, who's honest, who's authentic, and is clearly willing to fight. And then even if they don't agree with them on 100% of the things, or even if they try to nitpick and say, I don't know if having 4 public grocery stores is going to fix all the problems with food in New York, whatever, like, regardless of that, most of them can at least see, like, okay, but this guy's like, regardless of what I think of like these specific policies, this guy's like really trying to fight. This guy's like really trying to put the people first, right? So you don't like win these people over to the extent that people can be won over. You don't win them over by like meeting the fascists halfway. You win them over by showing them a better alternative that feels more authentic to them. And also, let's be clear, like it's a lot more politically viable to try to attract new voters, like people who don't usually vote, people who are just completely disenfranchised with the system. Like, think about it this way. If 2/3 of the country in America vote, right? And about 1/3 votes Democrat and about 1/3 votes Republican, and you're a Democratic politician and you're trying to drive up your base, do you think it makes more sense to try to win over some of that third of Republicans? Do you think they'll be more receptive to your ideas? Or do you maybe think that if you wanted to gain a lot of supporters, that going for that third of people who doesn't usually vote might be an easier resource to tap into, right? And this is exactly what Bernie and Zoran have been able to tap into. And that's why they've been massively successful in the context of the races that they've ran. And, you know, in terms of being able to come out of nowhere and building these huge movements and having huge popularity. And it's certainly something that, I mean, I think AOC recognizes it, but it's certainly something that Rashida Tlaib, based on what she's saying here, like, strongly recognizes. That, like, these corporate centrist, you know, people call them centrist Democrats, but they're just conservative Democrats, right? Those people are completely unable to convince or speak to the concerns of like conservative sympathetic people in an authentic way. If you want to like authentically speak to these people's issues, regardless of what their political identity or affiliation or whatever is, then the way to do it is to be like a bold principle leftist. So I just wanted to talk about that because we've been so beat over the head with like, oh, if you go too far left, you're gonna, if you act too progressive, you're gonna like turn off the average person, you're gonna like turn off all the conservatives, when it's like the opposite. The truth is, if you try to run too moderate and too conservative as a Democrat, you just lose everyone basically, except for the people who are terrified of Republicans. And the actual way to be able to gain the sympathy of people who might lean conservative electorally or are just independent or whatever is to be bold and uncompromising and principled. And as much as it like makes sense at a conceptual level, you do have to give a lot of kudos to people like Bernie and people like Rashida Tlaib, because they're the people who actually exist as examples of proof of it, right? And they're the ones that give us the confidence to like pursue that strategy. They validate it. Like I said, they show the path forward. And I think this is relevant with respect to the DSA too, because like personally, I always thought like, and maybe this was true of the DSA 10 plus years ago, but I always thought like it's a bit of a fringe organization that represents like a part of the left, and while it talks about valid ideas, it's not like positioned to really effectuate any change. And also, like, it's very difficult for it to move to a position where it has real influence, because like historically the CIA and like literally the intelligence services in like the US and everywhere like infiltrate those, right? It's like the old, like, throughout the West, right? Whether it's the UK, whether it's Canada, whether it's America, throughout the 60s, like having a secret police person in every single book club, even if the book club had nothing to do with politics or anything, right? Like the amount of surveillance and infiltration is huge. So I always thought like, oh, these organizations won't be allowed to become too powerful or relevant because they're being massively surveilled, and they've been infiltrated, and there's going to be people sabotaging them and derailing things, etc. So, I think I was a bit pessimistic in terms of the ability of a group like the DSA to effectuate change. But now I just have to look at it and think like, oh, like the most prominent popular person in the Democratic Party is AOC, a DSA member, the person with the best voting record in all of Congress. Like, I don't know who the last person, I don't even know if Bernie's record when he was in Congress was as good as and consistent as Rashida Tlaib's was. Our best legislator is also a DSA member. And now you have Zoran, who comes directly out of the DSA, has many DSA people like involved with the strategy for his campaign. And it's like, oh, like this is a proof of concept that these leftist organizations, whether, I'm sure they are heavily surveilled, I'm sure they are heavily infiltrated, but that doesn't mean that they can be stopped necessarily.
There has been one issue that I think people have been screaming about for good reason since October 7, 2023. And you're Palestinian. And obviously this is important to you for humanitarian reasons. It's also personal as well. And yet, in spite of the overwhelming amount of support for the Palestinians, and it's unprecedented in American history.
Never seen it.
80 plus years of occupation, or 77, 78 years of occupation.
Yeah, I've never seen anything like it.
Yeah. But in spite of all of that, a lot of Democrats are still holding on to this notion, this false idea that this is a salvageable relationship.
Yes. Yeah.
We're of course talking, for those of you at home, about Israel's genocide of the Palestinians in Gaza. And the latest numbers have shown that this is a 92 to 8% issue in the Democratic base.
Yeah.
92 to 8%. So any Democrat that still is not on fuck Israel time is just unable to read the room, or there's another reason for it. And I feel like when it comes to stuff like this, a lot of politicians in the Western world don't recognize that this is going to have a much more dangerous consequence for maintaining liberal capitalist democracy, if that is their imperative. Because a lot of people are realizing, oh, there is no democracy at all. It doesn't matter what our voices, it doesn't matter how loud we yell. There's no change coming.
Like, because it's diluting the voice. A very loud bullhorn right now in each district, Republican, Democrat, whatever. They are saying arms embargo. They are pushing back and saying, stop it. We don't want you to fund this. Get the away from Netanyahu. He's a genocidal maniac, war criminal. Why are we continuing to support this? Why, and again, even among the Republican Party establishment, you're seeing that move, right? But again, whatever their reasoning is, I can tell you, it's not just about the fun side, kill them all organizations. That's what I call them.
Yeah.
Those folks may be donating, and I know that it's a tremendous amount of money sometimes to candidates, but it's also some of my colleagues that I would consider progressive, but for Palestine.
Oh, yeah.
These are folks that are great on a number of issues. They're going to go out there and say, hey, UAE, what are you doing in Sudan?
Yeah.
What are you doing? Stop it, right? Or, whatever it is that they're out there speaking up about what's going on in Congo. But when it comes to Palestine and the Palestinian people, it's because there's an intimidation and bullying that happens. And I know, just so folks know, like, one of the second votes of this new Congress was to sanction the International Criminal Court for going after Netanyahu for their war crimes, for using, starvation as a weapon of war, for bombing hospitals and schools in 10, communities. And it was the second vote of Congress.
Yeah.
Second.
Nancy Pelosi once said, even if Congress fell apart, they would still get back up the next day and fund Israel. Like, even if Congress was destroyed,
I haven't heard
there
that
would
one.
still be money for Israel. It was one of those I don't know, I think it was like a JNA conference or something. A million of those things happen a year.
Well, I could tell you, so right after that, some of the new members, which I was really proud of them, they voted not to sanction the ICC.
Yeah.
Within a week, there was a text message to their Democratic base in their districts, because many of them were in what they call safe Democratic seats.
Mm-hmm.
They sent a text message, tell your Congress member, why did they expose our U.S. soldiers to a foreign court, and just wham it, call your member of Congress. And again, they didn't sign, hey, we're the pro-genocide, we want to kill all Palestinians groups.
Yeah.
But they came off, again, using our U.S. military. That's who. No, this was to uphold international laws and international human rights laws. But they intimidate and bully. These are members, Piker, that do not get money from the pro-genocide groups.
Yeah.
They don't.
So
you can look it up. They don't take money. But they are very much scared of the reaction from the group. They're going to primary me. They're going to come after me. They're going to call me anti-Semitic. I mean, it's that kind of intimidation and bullying that I think people don't pay attention to, that is also as dangerous as the donations that come in to their campaign accounts.
Wouldn't you say you, Ilhan Omar, and inshallah Zohran Mamdani, and maybe some others as well in the future, kind of prove that doesn't work? I mean, it's not great. It's not great to be in your position.
No,
I know that, like, you
I've said
receive
this
it.
too.
Yeah.
Recently, a colleague said, what do you have done? I said, I would have voted my district. And that person responded to me and said, you're right. I said, I bet you if you polled them, it would come back 60% in support of you voting for that amendment. And she said, nah, I think it would come back as 80%. And I said, but then why not vote your district? Vote your district. They will have your back. If anything, they attack you, use it. Show them that I stood with my district and I stood with my people, and they are attacking me for it. They're trying to bully me. People will donate. They will support that person. They will knock doors because they don't want to sell out. They don't want somebody that's bowing down to the status quo. They want somebody with courage in Congress. Congress has the worst approval rating ever since I've been there. And you wonder why. It's because people don't know which side you're on. You're iffy in this side. First of all, there is no strategy in genocide. Either you're against it or you're not.
Yeah.
There's no strategy. This weapon or this weapons are weapons. The fact of the matter is, don't take it from me. Listen to the Knesset. They are telling you with genocidal language, with ethnic cleansing language, kill them all, starve them. They're blocking trucks from coming in. That's who's in charge. Do you think it's mega? It's mega on steroids. The Likud party, Netanyahu, and all those folks have always wanted the ethnic cleansing of the Palestinian people.
Yeah.
And so even though there's a small minority of folks in Israel right now speaking up, they're being suppressed, they're being targeted. And all that to say, Piker, is like, my colleagues need to listen to their district and focus on their district, not the bubble of, Washington, D.C., who's like, don't do that. They're going to do this to you, or they're going to do that. If you're going to function from a place of fear and be paralyzed on a very critical issue that is not a Palestinian, a Muslim, an Arab issue. It is an American issue. One of my colleagues told me a farmer in Wisconsin got up in his town hall, asked him, why the hell are we funding this? He was proud. He's like, good. Listen to the people who might not, again, share my ethnicity or faith, are telling you overwhelmingly, stop it. We can't be supporting this and the funding.
I think this played a major role in Kamala Harris's defeat. I don't know.
You can hear it from even young black voters in my district who said, I don't trust them. If they're going to let a genocide happen, I don't trust them. They were already in crutches. This just put some of them over the edge.
I think that Ta-Nehisi Coates said it best.
Yeah.
If you can't trust them to stop a genocide, what makes you think that they'll save democracy here in America?
It was a 24-year.
Go to my previous video about Democrats not being able to answer Gaza. I talk about the exact same thing. It's so true. Like, never mind stopping the genocide. If these Democrats aren't even willing to be honest enough to say, like, yes, it is a genocide, yes, it's ethnic cleansing, and, like, clearly say that, if they can't take a clear stance on that, then what can they be relied on to take a clear stance on? Nothing. What is, what is their limit where they say, okay, this is too horrible, like I have to take a stand? There is no limit. They'll let anything go, no matter how horrible it is, if they think it serves their power via their donors and, the interest groups that back the party.
Old Detroiter. She's got 1 year left in nursing school, and she didn't know who I was. I was doing like street interviews, and she brought it up. Of course, she brought Sudan and all this, and I was like, "Wow, at 24 years old, you know a lot. It's amazing."
Should have asked her if she's a Hassan head.
Maybe next time.
Yeah.
And what's incredible is afterwards, I said to her, "Do you know who I'm Rashida Tlaib. I'm Palestinian." She goes, "Oh, you do look familiar." And I said, "But you just mentioned the genocide in Gaza." She goes, "Oh yeah, I've been watching it. It's awful." Yeah. And I can't believe the Democrats are, because warmongering and genocide is bipartisan right now.
For sure.
Literally half of my caucus votes for the defense budget.
It's not just that, but it's like there's so much entitlement and so much arrogance coming from the Israeli envoys that are used to getting no pushback whatsoever, and then like uncompromising loyalty, that they just can't contend with that at all. So like any kind of questioning of like, why are you starving children, immediately causes them to fall apart. And I think a lot of people see that.
Yeah.
And then the Trump administration also does insane things. I feel like half of the messaging coming out of like the admin right now is him just basically signaling to everyone that he definitely was on the Epstein lists, like he definitely was an Epstein friend. And then the other half is just like pushing for a bill that basically dictates that you go to jail if you're a nurse that at one point said free Palestine. So like when Americans see that, or when they see FEMA funds being revoked if you don't sign a loyalty pledge to Israel, of course they're gonna be like, what is this? What is going on? And then there's two things that I think I try to warn liberals and Democrats in general on. One is that there is a major messaging void. There are unfortunately not many people like yourself in the Democratic Party, or at least in the eyes of the population. People like Marjorie Taylor Greene are filling that void of being like the anti-Israel voice. And I don't even just mean anti-genocide, I mean like straight up anti-Israel. There is a lot of animosity towards this country that we have always perceived as the most moral nation. It's insane to think, but there is a lot of anger, and I think it's the number one way to communicate earnesty as a politician, because it's one of those issues where it's like so overwhelmingly popular with the base, and it's just not even talked about in mainstream outlets, even though that's changing a little bit, but it's too little too late, and I think it's a little bit of ass covering. And then with politicians, it's on the Democratic Party side, politicians are just so quiet about this issue that everyone goes, what do you mean? This is not like a thing on your mind at all? And I think
they will pull everything except this issue.
Yeah. And I've had conversations with the Pod Johns, the Pod Save America boys, before the election and after the election, doing an autopsy with them, and before the election warning them on this issue. And the feedback I got from them was so strange. Like they were like, well, there's a lot of Jewish voters in Michigan that really want Israel to continue doing its unlimited destruction. And I was like, that's not true.
That isn't true.
That's not true.
Most of the student encampments I've been on and near are been led by Jewish students.
Yeah.
Overwhelmingly.
Yeah, there's certainly a generational.
Yeah, they need to separate, of course, the faith from the oppressive genocidal policies. That's not,
No, they're doing.
When they say "not in our name," that's what they mean.
Yeah. Also, it's that kind of messaging coming from supposedly progressive individuals
Yes.
or like people on the liberal side create what I like to call woke dual loyalty, where you're just like, oh, this person is Jewish, of course they love
Yes.
Israel, and that's a good thing, versus what someone like a neo-Nazi says, oh, of course those people love Israel, and that's a bad thing because they're Jewish. So like they're saying the same thing. So if like the overwhelming majority of sentiment that the public is hearing from these, you know, organs of media and people with institutional power is all Jews love Israel, all they care about is Israel, but everyone realizes what Israel is doing is heinous, what do you think that is going to do to like anti-Semitic feelings that the broader population has?
Yeah, I don't know what it will do. I just know that one of the things that my Jewish neighbors have been very, very active. I mean, I've never seen this kind of movement, especially among younger generation of Jewish neighbors who are very much trying to push back against that narrative, push back against and call it out. They call it out in a way that me and you could never, because it's so authentic, it's so real. It's like, stop, this has nothing to do with that. I do not support a genocide, but I don't support apartheid. I don't support a country.
What Rashida just said about like young Jews being able to speak out against Israel in a way that like others can't. I think looking at the commentary of Michael Brooks is really illustrative here, because he wasn't like religiously Jewish, but as somebody, you know, from a Jewish background, when he spoke about what was happening in Gaza and, you know, Palestine broadly, you could tell it was personal to him in the sense of like it's threatening what the Zionists are doing there, like with apartheid, with genocide, etc. It was threatening to him and his Jewish, like, because of his Jewish identity. I like saying that it's weaponizing the historical struggles of Jewish people to do these awful things. Like, the word weaponizing doesn't do it justice, right? But I think as much as Zionism obviously obviously victimizes, you know, Arab, Palestinian, Muslim people disproportionately, you also have to keep in mind, like, most Zionists, and especially the ones with power, are white Christians, evangelical Christians in America. That's what most Zionists are. And the other group that they're disproportionately victimizing in all of this, in a less like direct way, obviously, but I think in equally insidious way, you know, as things play out, is the anti-Zionist Jews. The Jewish way of life, the way that Jews in certain communities around the world were able to thrive despite centuries of persecution, that is threatened by Zionism in a very real sense today. And their very identity as Jewish people is being appropriated and colonized by, you know, Western white evangelical Christians, who are the majority of Zionists by far, and the ones with the power, you know, and it's all toward political and economic ends. It's all in the interests of, you know, Raytheon and Boeing stock and the capabilities of empire to project their hegemony and their capacity to develop strategies to quash resistance. So I think in a lot of this, there is an understated tragedy and like a real existential threat to Jewish people, but not in the sense of Jewish people need Zionism to survive. No, it's the opposite. The threat is that any Jewish person who wants to be anti-Zionist and who wants to live in a secular world or be safe around the world or, have freedom of association and identity in their Jewishness, that's all being threatened by what the Zionists and the Israeli government are currently doing. And obviously it just goes against some of the core, what I'm not I'm not a Jewish scholar or anything, but struggle is very core to the identity, to the traditional identity of Jewish people in the modern context. And so that identity and that struggle that's persisted for generations is just being spat on by what's happening, what the Israeli government and the US government especially are doing right now. Right? It's just an insult to like Albert Einstein is rolling in his grave right now at what's happening. And he considered himself a cultural Zionist, but he spoke out. He was vehemently an anti-Zionist in a political sense. So anyway, I think if you want to don't listen to me. I'm no Jewish catboy, but if you want to get like a window into how this, how what the Israeli government is doing and what political Zionism is doing in a broad sense is an existential threat to Jewish people and the, traditional historic Jewish identity. Like I said, go listen to Michael Brooks talk about it. Or what are other examples? Gabor Mate, Norm Finkelstein, Noam Chomsky, Listen to them talk about this. As Jewish people with proximity to anti-Jewish genocide, try to understand what they think this means for them. And I can think of no better way to rip the mask off the Zionist movement and expose it for the white settler colonial project that it is than to do that, than to listen to these Jews who have the awareness to be against political Zionism, have the historical and cultural perspective to be against those things.
Everything you're saying is true. I just hope people that are listening and young folks just being engaged, no matter if it's the voting, because voting should be voting plus plus. I just don't want you to feel like there's no place for you all to be able to use your voice and push back. One of the things I've learned in watching the student encampments, and I've heard the history of the anti-war movement on campuses, has been incredible. I've watched one university flip and now doing some transformative things like getting more scholarships to kids from Gaza to get them here so they can have a future. All of that to say is there's so many ways beyond Congress and beyond legislation and beyond Election Day that we can really transform our country and push back against, the status quo. I just find your place. I know I'm at the DSA convention and there's a place there, it may or may not be your thing of, being among folks that are just like, tax the rich and, pushing back against the 1% and capitalistic schemes. But if it's around education, if it's around civil rights, if around just your being able to have the First Amendment right to speak up and not be targeted or intimidated, and that continues to happen to so many young people, is find your collective folks that will have your back and push back. And so, look at this platform. This is not mainstream media, and you have millions of people that will follow, the conversation and learn and use it to fight back against all of it. I just don't want people to be so pathetic, like they just don't feel like they have any power. I come from Detroit.
Yeah.
I promise you, come every corner is a reminder, like there's murals, or a reminder like it wasn't the city hall or the governor or the elected people. It was them. They marched, they boycotted, they black shit, they withheld their labor so they can get Voting Rights Act, Civil Rights Act, the right to organize unions. It is literally the home of, the struggle to unionize workplaces. People left, couldn't leave their work, they died in the workplace. People left and couldn't even survive with the pennies that they were getting from these, the elitists and the, boss folks that were running these big companies. And so collectively, they were power. And it's something to learn from that. And I've constantly reminded people of that. I'm in Congress and I find sometimes I feel so incredibly helpless. I'm there, I'm pushing back. And I thought, okay, I'm going to bring the movement on the inside. And I do my best. But I watch people out there are way more powerful than I am right now. Like, they don't realize, like, I'm inspired. I'm like, keep it up. Because it's getting loud. They can't ignore you all. I watched them so upset. Oh my God, I'm getting protested again, Rashida. I said, I ain't related to them. I don't know why you're calling me. They look like your constituents. Maybe you should go meet with them.
Yeah.
Like, they're sending me like videos and shit. Piker. Like, I look at them and I'm like, I'm not in charge of student encampments. I'm not in charge. I don't live in Pennsylvania. I live in Michigan. And it's just so bizarre that they want to bottle it up and make it a Palestinian issue, an immigrant issue, or a Muslim issue, and it's not. It's American.
No, it's a people issue. I went out. I go out to these protests all the time, and there's people from all different kinds of backgrounds, all different walks of life. It's solidarity and display.
That's right.
And it has nothing to do with like one specific group that's like fighting for their own rights. Like that kind of like sectarianism does not exist.
They freak out when the veterans gets up in committee hearing and says, I'm a veteran, I fought in Afghanistan and Iraq, stop funding the genocide. They're like, they don't know what to do. It's like, wake up. America is not with the majority of members of Congress. And they need to wake up. They need to understand they're not voting their district. And again, many of them like, oh, I'm against this and against that. But again, they're always progressive and always on the left on this issue and this issue. When it comes to Palestine, they pause, they paralyze. And I really believe it's rooted in anti-Palestinian racism and dehumanization and dismissiveness, because for years they were given permission to do it for so long. And now American people are like, nah, we ain't gonna let you keep doing this.
Yeah, Randy Fine is a fantastic example. This is actually something that I find really...
I just wanted to chime in and say, I find it really inspiring when Rashida talks about, she thinks that the people have more power than her. And like, it's not always easy to see that power. We see that power very clearly in the form of like Zoran coming out of nowhere to become the Democratic candidate for mayor in New York City. And we maybe see it in, organizing labor action, like through a union or a student protest, right? But people don't always acknowledge the power they have, even the people wielding that power. Like there's so many people who could get involved with activism and make a difference and have influence. But even the people who are doing it, I think, actively and are super involved in leading these movements, like the people leading the movements at Columbia or Harvard or one of these schools, having big protests against the genocide, like those students who are organizing it might just think of them like doing their part in their community, right? But they move the needle on a national and even international way. And I don't think they like realize the impacts of their involvement. And I think that's partly because of the media, right? The media screams all day about Trump and about, I don't know, Biden before, whoever, political leaders, Netanyahu, right? And obviously these people have power, but the media, like in terms of like mainstream corporate media, right? The media stations that are shoved down our throats, they sensationalize the power and the influence of these individuals in a way that kind of disenfranchises and demobilizes, the working class from kind of having class power, and also just like leaders in their communities and what they're able to do and kind of the issues that they're able to elevate to having more of a national profile, right? Like Gaza Israel conflict, if it was up to these politicians in Washington, if it was up to the Nancy Pelosi's of the world, they would just be talking about like tax credits for like people making a certain amount of money if they meet certain qualifications or whatever. They would be talking about these like quirky little economic things that they would propose as like their important solutions, their important issues. But the reason, the reason that something like Israel Gaza gains so much prominence in the national conversation is because, people like Hasan, who are influential in the media and who are able to like leverage, the platform they have. But also just like people who don't have any platform in the media at all and who are just, community organizers. Like I said, labor leaders, student leaders. Like the movement wouldn't be what it is without those people, right? The Vietnam War wouldn't, the US wouldn't have given up with its invasion of Vietnam if it hadn't been for the student protesters. And like the civil rights movement never would have gotten to the point it got to if it hadn't been for, student activists and things like that. And and I think the media purposely sensationalizes the power of politicians while erasing the power of people, just normal people, and the things that they actually accomplish. But at least in historical terms, when we look back on these times, as like our ability to understand history improves and we look back on things in retrospect with the more complete picture of how things move, those people will be lionized. Those student leaders, those labor leaders, those people in the media like Hasan, who played a more significant role in resisting genocide, resisting all forms of human rights atrocities than any sitting politician is doing, right? So they'll get their flowers eventually. It might be a little late, but I don't know, it's just important to recognize the reality in that sense, especially like as people, which we are people who could hopefully try to change a thing ourselves.
God rest his soul, like my grandfather always was like, I don't understand. I used to pick olives next to my Jewish neighbor. There was no Friday was call of prayer, Saturday was Sabbath, and Sunday was church bells. That's how we existed. And then, folks came in and had this like, whatever structure that they wanted to put in to completely erase and remove people. It's sad. You go into villages, you can still see the stairs to the homes that were demolished.
Yeah, no, it's devastating, and that what you're describing here is I think an area in this conversation that most Americans are still not privy to, and I don't even expect people to like recognize the totality of this violence and this the violent practice of like maintaining an apartheid structure for so long, but I do think that the environment is changing in unprecedented ways, in ways that I never thought was possible, where so many people are, up in arms.
They know where Palestinians are now.
Yeah.
And, I mean, so many people don't know what happened in 1948, but they know what's happening is wrong.
Yeah.
And I just smile. It's a sad smile, but I'm just silent. I was like, thank you. Like, you're like, but why are they it's just overwhelming like support now. I mean, in 2018 I went door to door and people are like, what are you? I'm like, I'm Palestinian. They're like, oh, my doctor's from Pakistan. I was like, I would then correct them. And but now it's like, how's your family? Is everything okay? I can't believe we're letting this happen.
Yeah.
And they also don't believe it's just Netanyahu. They believe in that it is absolutely a violent apartheid state.
No, it's an ideology. Zionism is an exterminationist ideology built around ethno-religious supremacist values. So when people say like, oh well, I'm a liberal Zionist, like I want there to be a Jewish.
I've heard that so many times.
I'm a liberal Zionist. I want there to be a Jewish ethno state. I'm like, okay. Like, what do you mean? It's like saying you're like a liberal Nazi. You want an Aryan majority ethno state? Like, what are you talking about? There's people there.
Yeah.
There's people there that Israel is occupying the lives of. There's people there that Israel is like ritualistically destroying the lives of, and all at the behest of this project. There is no like liberal angle here. And then post October 7, it basically showed that reality. There is a poll that came out.
People are seeing exactly what the Palestinian people were screaming and saying, please, do you know this is what they're doing?
There's a poll that came out from the Israeli Democracy Institute. Mm-hmm. They routinely poll Israeli society. Now, Israel, given its ethno-state status, has two designations. And I'm telling this to them. This already. Yeah. Arab and Jew. Those are the two designations for Israeli society. Even though there is a shit ton of Arab Jews, they're classified as Jews, and everyone down to Armenians and Christians and Muslims who are not Jewish in Israeli society are declared Arab. Okay, those polls show that at this stage, 79% of Israeli Jews say they care either not at all or not enough about the starvation that's going on in Gaza. Only 0.8% of Israeli Jews have said that they don't know anything about it.
I saw something with 80 at one point, maybe it was a while ago.
Yeah, so clearly this is a manifestation of extremely right-wing, reactionary, fascist ideology that has overtaken Israeli society, has captured Israeli society. And this is part of the reason why I even tried to like make pleas to politicians directly when I was talking to them in the lead up to this election, where I was like, just do it from a partisan position. Just like say Netanyahu's bad, say Netanyahu's a bad guy. He's pro-Trump. Just like anything, like try to angle this if you don't care about the humanity.
Some of them are so like two state. I'm like, while walls are being built and apartheid structures are expanding, I said to them, okay,
but Netanyahu says no state.
That's right. But Piker, that's exactly what I told this member from the Midwest. She was like, well, I'm for a two-state, and I know you're not, And I said, well, no, I believe in coexistence. And she goes, well, I said, no, that's them trying to silence me and explaining that, again, growing up in a black city, I know what this means. I know it's about dehumanizing and making people less equal to rights. And I said to them, well, if you believe in a two-state, why are you giving money to a government that doesn't believe in a two-state? You're literally funding a person that believes in one state, but only for one faith, in elimination of anybody that isn't. And she just looked at me and she never thought of it that way.
There has been some contention, which I'm seeing now, like where Democrats are basically like finally trying to come around to being like, well, maybe no offensive weapons, right? Like, well, let's just stop the offensive weapons. And it's like, you said weapons are weapons. Do you want to elaborate a little bit on that?
I mean, they're weapons. The fact of the matter is, you have a country right now, didn't bomb only Gaza, bombed a number of other countries, just poking and trying
Lebanon,
to drag.
Syria, Iran,
oh my God, you should see what they're doing in Lebanon.
Yemen.
And a lot of my families are from South Lebanon. And I mean, every single moment around there, and it's used to enable and basically continue the status quo. That's exactly what that's about.
Yeah.
And no matter what folks label it the fact, either you want to end it or you don't. And the way you do it by stopping all arms, no matter what they label it at. It's ridiculous. I don't know what the strategy are. You either want it in the genocide or you don't.
Yeah.
No weapons, zero, what you label it at. as.
We don't give an Iron Dome. We didn't even give an Iron Dome to Ukraine, and they deserved it. Like, they needed it, and Israel said no, and we didn't give them the Iron Dome, and they were being pummeled by Russia. We certainly don't even entertain the notion of like the civilians that are living in Russia. There's civilians living in Russia. They're getting a counterstrike by Ukrainian drones and whatnot. Do they need an Iron Dome? Are we pushing for an Iron Dome from them? Or are we giving them defensive weapons? That's never existed in the history of any conflict. And of course, people will say Israel's our ally.
But you got to look at the arms sales. You got to look at everything. That particular vote that came to the House, but look at the arms sales that, 26 senators tried. That part of that arms sales is all of it. It's just weapons. They have the courage to say, no, we're done. We're going to use the power of our vote to say to the Israeli government, the U.S., or their districts, their respective states, do not support the continuation of the slaughter of a whole people.
Yeah, do you feel like your colleagues look to people like yourself and even your base of support, which is overwhelmingly popular, like people like myself, people that are outside of the political system, and think we're just like naive or like, what is the attitude?
I don't know. I remember after they censured me, overwhelming. I mean,
that was insane.
It was insane, but also like I was so demoralized because it was 22 Democratic colleagues joined them. It would have never passed but for them. And they knew I wasn't anti-Semitic and everything. They knew what was happening. And at that moment...
Yeah, they censored you for saying from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free.
I didn't say it was in a video. It was a very beautiful video of like protests.
Oh, you posed it. You didn't even say it. Well, I mean, it doesn't matter.
But I wasn't going to throw my residents under the bus who do chant it. I grew up, we chanted it because it rhymed. We knew what it meant, but the way they police you.
No, it's bullshit. It's like,
bullshit,
and it's the same exact, and Democrats do this too, so it gives a little bit more protective cover.
At that moment, the next quarter, I raised almost $3 million. And they're like, this one Republican like Texas member was like, oh, wow, Tlaib, good job. I said, yeah, there's a lot of anti-genocide money out there. There's a lot of anti-genocide supporters out there that are saying this is bullshit. And I told them, I said, look at it. These are $10, $15, $20. This is not like, what they can imagine. You see, it's like 18,000, different people coming together and saying that's bullshit. But they won't move with that base. That 10 will come to us if we move with them, if we have their back. Instead, right now, they're confused. They're like, I mean, you saw it at the DNC. It's like, we're going to have the most lethal military arm. It was awful. That
was my checkout moment. That's when I was like, we're done. We're cooked.
I gasped.
Yeah.
And I was like, no.
I had the same feeling.
Yeah. And no matter what it
was after I got
Obama,
kicked out.
he ran on anti-war. But, Obama, no matter what you feel about him now, but like Obama ran on anti-war. He ran on, we're going to shut Guantanamo Bay. I get some of my colleagues to support it.
Yeah.
And you're about to get put in there.
Yeah.
Like, wake up, like shut it down. And even in that moment, I don't know. I know we called it disconnect, but it's stronger than that. It is this like separate world that happens there. My sister knows, like, after the vote, I have to go back. As soon as I land in Detroit Metro Airport, I feel like I can breathe because they try to make it out like we're crazy, that something's wrong with us. But when you get home, they're like, good job. Oh, did you do this, Rashida? I need this. And you can see, again, it doesn't match up with what they're presenting or what they're doing.
But like the poll numbers show that. Like right now,
they'll only listen to polls if it meets their special interest donors. Again, Republicans and Democrats right now that are making a lot of decisions that are at the top, these are in leadership positions, their donors match. It's almost the same donors.
Yeah.
I find that even being in there is like a protest. It's like pushing back against, these false narratives and the racist tropes and so forth. Because Congress shouldn't just look differently, if they sprinkle us on for diversity, it should also speak differently and feel differently. And I think the more people that are unbought and totally like really corny and want to change the world for the better, and come from a place of love, it needs to infiltrate more into Congress, a lot more than it is now.
All right, well, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. Really appreciate it. Do you shake hand? What do you do? Fist bump? My brother. So Adam's gonna kill me for doing that.
No, it's all good.
He's like, Mom. Yeah.
All right. What are we doing?
I just want to say I really appreciate how, a lot of this was personal and a lot of this was kind of a window into Rashida's experience as kind of the outsider on the inside. Um, in terms of like her being in the political institution and whatnot. But she throughout this she definitely maintained a focus on like here are actionable things. Like here's what people can do, here's what people should feel inspired by. And I really like that idea of directing things towards what average people can actually do. Like if we talk about someone like Bernie at his best is talking about a political revolution of us, not me, and is talking about people across the country coming together and rallying and organizing, for certain changes they want to see, right? Which is very distinct from a politician who just says, "Well, I'm doing my best here. I'm doing my thing. My role is this. My job is to do this, and I'm just one vote, but I'm doing my best as 1 out of 100 or 1 out of 500 people or whatever." But to understand the role of a leader isn't like just to be the best bureaucratic legislator you can within your own role, but to actually like help lead people like outside of the system in terms of how they can effectuate change as well. And I do think that like Rashida did a good job representing that throughout this interview. So that's why she's the best.